Hi guys, welcome to Mindful Movement video number 2. Just a couple of things you might want to grab before we start the videos. So you could grab hold of 2 books. This could make replacement for our blue block. And you could also grab hold of one of your husband's tie or a belt to replace the strap. So they're good tools that you can use just to make alignment a little easier. I will be using the blocks and straps to give you cues by if I need to use them. So for the start off, enjoy the video. Come to laying down on your mat. So bringing the feet towards the front of the mat, the hands down by the sides of the body, and just turn the palms upwards. Let the fingers gently curl and just give those hips a little rock from side to side. And just take a couple of moments here to have a scan of the body, just as it's laying here on the floor, getting everything relaxed, ready for the practice. So having a scan of that body will tell you where you're holding any tight spots, knowing whether you're holding any injuries. Be mindful of them as you move through the practice. When you've taken that scan of the body, bring the attention then to that energetic body, that breath, just noticing where that breath is sitting. Maybe it's high up in the chest, maybe it's into the middle of the ribs, maybe you're already breathing that breath deep into the belly. Just watching it for a moment, no judgment of it, just being mindful of it. If that breath is quite high up in the chest, see whether you can now send it more into this lower part of the rib cage, expanding those ribs as you breathe in and reducing those rib expansions as you breathe out. If you're already breathing into this space, maybe try and send it into the belly. So as you breathe in, the belly blows up like a balloon on the inhale, and as you breathe out, that belly drops back towards the spine on the exhale. Wherever those breaths are at the moment, just expanding the body on the inhale and relaxing the body on the exhale, letting that floor support you just for a couple more breaths. Trying to breathe that breath in and out through the nose if you can now, unless you're holding any colds or allergies, in which case use the mouth. So bringing the feet together at the base of the mat, bring the hands up and over the head, reaching through the fingertips, reaching through the toes, maybe arching into that lower back. And then taking a hold of the fingertips and interlace them. Take the feet over to the right side, take the hands over to the right side, creating that half moon shape on the floor. Both hips are level, so both sit bones are grounded, both shoulders are level, so the shoulder blades are plugging into the mat. And we're feeling that contraction down the right side of the waist and the length down the left side. Maybe breathing that breath this time a little more into that left side of the body. Relax the shoulders, relax the forehead, relax the jaw. Maybe take that left foot over the right foot just to give it a little stretch for another breath. Then bringing the hands back into the centre, the feet back into the centre, stretch through the fingers, stretch through the toes, arch that lower back. And then release, interlace the fingers again, bring the hands over, this time to the left side, the feet over to the left side. Make both sit bones ground to the floor, both shoulder blades. Relax the shoulders, the jaw, maybe take that right foot over the left. So we're taking lateral flexion through that spine. Try and tuck the tailbone down, so we're taking a little bit of that arch out of the lower back. And encourage the ribs and hips a little closer together. And then bring those hands back into the centre, the feet back into the centre, and reach through the fingertips, reach through the toes, arch through that back. And then bringing the hands up and over that head. Bring one knee at a time in towards the chest. Interlace the fingers around the knees, squeeze the knees in. Try and keep those sit bones low, try and keep the shoulder blades plugged into the mat. And just have that gaze or those eyes closed, but having the heads and faces facing up towards the ceiling. Squeeze those knees in a little closer. Push those lower spines into the mat a little further. Taking another breath here. Then bringing the hands down by the sides of the body, and then just place the thumbs underneath the bum, palms flat. Reach up through the heels of the feet to bring the legs into a nice long straight line. Bring the toes back towards the shins. Maybe your legs look a little bit like this if those hamstrings are tight. Maybe they look even worse than that. But that doesn't matter. So long as you feel those stretch through the back of those legs, you're doing the job. But the more you push the heels away and straighten those legs a little further, the more stretch you'll feel through the back of those legs. So now I want you to think about core engagement. Feel like these ribs and hips are squeezing towards each other, belly's drawn back. And slowly release that right leg down to hovering off the mat. Don't let the lower spine lift. Try and keep the shoulders relaxed. And then as slow as you took it down, bring it slowly again back up towards the ceiling. And then the next breath out you take, let the left leg lower to come to hover off that mat. And then your next breath in, release that leg back up towards the ceiling, bringing both feet back together. Again on the other side, so the right leg lowers, the left leg stays high, the left leg heel pushes away, toes back to the shins, and then slowly raise that right leg again back up to the ceiling, all the time squeezing in this area. Pushing those lower backs into the mat, lowering that left leg nice and controlled towards the floor, but it doesn't reach. And then slowly bring that leg back up towards the ceiling. And as both legs arrive up high, bring the knees back into the chest and give those knees a squeeze. Then releasing your left leg down towards the floor and let it relax on the mat long. Lift that right leg again back up towards the ceiling, draw the right toes back to the shins and start to walk those hands as far up those legs as you can go, lifting that chest away and bringing the shoulders away from the mat. Trying to squeeze your body as close as you can towards that right thigh. Drawing that right leg back closer towards the body. One more breath here. And then release those shoulders back down. Bring that right foot to the inside of the left thigh. Hands onto the hips. Let the right knee drop out to the side. Try and keep the hips neutral. Try not to let that hip rock over. If you wish to bring that right hand onto the top of that right knee to encourage it down a little more, keeping the left hand on the left hip to keep hips nice and neutral. Hold it here just for one more breath. Then bring that knee back into the centre. Bring that knee back into the chest and take a hold of that foot on the outside of that right foot. If you can't reach, maybe bring it to the ankle, maybe bring it in towards those shins. But try and squeeze that knee as close as you can into the outside of that right rib cage, in towards that right armpit. And then just let that foot point up towards the ceiling, the heel away, the toes back to the shins. So we're opening through that right hip flexor. Relax everything everywhere else. One more breath here. And then releasing that foot, bring that knee back into the chest for a breath. Bring the left knee in to meet the right, then take a hold of that left knee. Let the right leg come down on the mat. Right leg straight, then maybe lift that left heel towards the ceiling, straightening that left leg as much as you can. Then start to walk those hands up towards the foot, the chest coming towards the leg, the shoulders lifting away from the mat. The belly's drawn back, we squeeze that leg in as close as we can. And we try and relax the jaw, relax the shoulders, maybe relax the arms a little. One more breath here. Hamstring stretch down that left leg. Release those shoulders back down. Bring that left foot to the inside of that right thigh. Open that left knee out to the side. So we've got tree leg position on this left side. Keep the right hand on the right hip. Maybe use the left hand to draw that knee out a little further. Getting a stretch through the inside of that groin. Both hips stay nice and neutral on the mat. Active foot of the right bringing the toes back towards the shins. Then bringing that knee back in towards the centre, bring it in towards the chest, taking your left hand to either the outside of the foot, the ankle or the shin, wherever you can reach. And then just squeeze that left knee in towards that left armpit. Try and bring that left heel over stacking that left knee. And just relax through everything, through the neck, through the shoulders. Squeeze it in as tight as you can go. Maybe you feel a little bit of a hamstring stretch, or maybe a little stretch in that IT band. But just try to encourage that left thigh to the outside of those left ribs a little further. One more breath here. And then bring that left knee in towards the chest. Squeeze that knee nice and tight. Bring your right knee in to join the left. Take a hold of the creases of the knees and then rock up and down the spine a couple of times. And then the next time you come up to seated, just hold it there for a breath. So we're now going to bring ourselves into what we call a boat pose, but we're going to take it in progressions. So take a hold of the creases of the knee, find that balancing point between the sit bones and the lower spine. Relax the shoulders back. Find the balancing point by coming up onto the toe tips. And then raise up one leg, bringing the foot to knee high. Raise up the other, bringing the other foot to knee high. And just hold it here, lifting through the chest, lifting through the chin, pushing the shoulder blades back into those back pockets. Pointing through the toes, and then flex the feet, bringing those toes back towards the shins, and then take a point back through those toes again and bring it back into flex, and then make circles with those ankles. So we're getting into those joints around those ankle areas, giving them better mobility. Take them into the opposite direction and then bring them back to stillness. Point through the toes. And then maybe you wish to release one hand, maybe you wish to release the other. Taking one more breath here, or keeping a hold of those knees if you wish. And then bring those feet back down, tuck the toes under the bum, or swing the legs around, making your way into a tabletop position. So we're going to bring the knees under the hips, the heel of the hands under the shoulders, tops of the feet flat. So your next breath in, we're going to do a few rounds of cat-cow. We breathe in, lift up the head, lift up the bum, let the belly drop, let the shoulders squeeze back to the hips. And the breath out, we tuck everything back in, the chin comes into the chest, the tailbone tucks and the centre of the spine lifts. Take it back in the opposite direction. So articulating through this spine, one vertebrae at a time moving, noticing how all of that spine feels. The lower part of the spine, the lumbar, the mid part of the spine, the thoracic, and the upper part of the spine, the cervical spine, round the neck. Keep that going in and out for your breaths. So we roll through the back on the exhale, and we send that belly to the floor on the inhale. The next time you come back through that neutral space, hold it there. Bring the hands a little further forward. Open them wide as the mat. Keep their sit bones high and just let those chests sink down towards the floor. So here you may wish to use a block for the forehead or a book, whichever you're working with, and just to bring that forehead onto the mat, just to settle the body a little further. Or maybe you wish to use that block just under the chest and just let that head hang down in front of it. Or you can encourage that chest as far down towards the floor as you can take it, keeping those sit bones nice and high. Stretching through the armpits up to the fingertips, from the armpits down to the hips. Taking that back into a slight extension, shoulders into flexion. Keep pushing into the tops of the feet. Taking one more breath in this position. Then making your way down onto your belly, bringing those forearms down to the mat, bringing those elbows underneath those shoulders, widen the fingers, push into the big toes, push into the hips, push into that pubic bone, squeeze the bum. Try not to sink into the shoulders, push out of those shoulders with the neck, grow through the crown. Taking a couple of easy breaths in this position. And then bringing those chests back down towards the floor, bringing the hands by the sides of the chest, tuck under the toes, bring those chests back towards those thighs. Widen the knees, bring the big toes together, sit bones to the heels, foreheads to the mat. Then from here we're going to bring the right hand underneath the left armpit, bringing that right shoulder back down towards the floor and the forehead to the mat. So these bums don't need to meet the heels. Sometimes you may be in this position. Depends on what range of movement you've got in your hips, around the knees, depending what muscle mass you have in the calves. Quite often muscle mass will stop those bums going closer towards those heels. So wherever those bodies reach, your own natural body, different to everybody else's. So if you're practicing with somebody in the room, somebody may look different to you, but it's about you, your body on your mat. Reach back out with that right hand, send it to meet the left, and then thread the left hand underneath the right armpit. Turn that left palm up. Bring that left shoulder to the mat, forehead to the mat, and again just let everything relax over that muscle of the shoulder, the deltoid muscle, stretching through the back of the body as well, around the rhomboids. Then bring that left hand back out, reaching back forward to meet that right hand, and just let that chest sink. Then walking the hands back up in towards the body. Bring the knees together. And then try and bring those feet apart. You may need to use a block or a book here. Just bring those sit bones down onto those blocks. So the feet are wide, the knees are together. We roll the shoulders up towards the ears, back down towards the hips. And then maybe bring those hands behind the back. And lift the chest, lift the gaze. Push into the knees, lift up those hips away from those blocks if you've got that availability. Or just keep relaxing back onto those hands, lifting those chests. If you're with me, we're just going in and out of lifting and lowering those bums. So we're stretching the hip flexors and the quad muscles on the front of those thighs. As we lift and lower, squeeze the bum as we lift the hips. Release them back down to that block. One more time, lifting those hips, releasing those hips back down. And then bringing your body back up, bring the block away from under the bum or the books. Bring the knees to hip width apart, the feet hip width apart. Place the hands on the base of the spine, little fingers coming together, fingers pointing down to the floor. Squeeze the shoulder blades back, push the hips forward, lift up first through the ribs, then through the chest, then through the gaze, taking it into a back bend. Trying to tuck that tailbone down so we don't impinge that lower back. Only go into your range of movement. That may be up here for you. It may be right back here for somebody else. Breathe that breath nice and deep. It may feel a little restricted as you're holding this back bend, but just make sure you keep those breaths coming. One more breath here. And then bringing those shoulders back over those hips, nice and controlled. Bring the knees together, bring the feet together, bring the sit bones down to the heels. Bring the foreheads down to the mat. Bring the hands down behind the bum, take a hold of the heel of the feet. So then we're going to bring the more of the top of the head onto the mat. So tuck the chin into the chest, Tuck that head under. Without putting too much pressure on the neck, lift through the bum, bringing those bums away from those heels and stretching through the arms, stretching through that lower back. Another couple of breaths here. If it feels too much pressure on the head, come back out. And then bring those bums back down to the heels. Bring the foreheads back onto the mat and reach those arms forward, stretching again through those fingertips. One more breath here. Your next breath in, come up onto the hands and knees. Bring the knees back under the hips, so the hip width apart, tops of the feet flat. Turn your right foot just off the edge of the mat, and then bring the weight into the right hand and send the left foot to the back of the mat and lift the left hand up towards the ceiling, taking a gaze to that thumb if you wish. So keeping a nice strong grounding into that right hand. If the wrists feel a little tight, walk them forward a little further on that right side. And then from here, if you're happy to raise that left leg up to hip height, bringing it into a side angle plank, but with the bottom knee dropped. Hold it here for another breath. Squeeze the outside of those glutes as you lift that left leg. One more breath. Release then that left foot back down to the floor. Bring the left hand back to meet the right. Bring the right foot back into where it was. Round of cat-cow. Breath in, lifts up the head, lifts up the bum, drops the belly. Breath out, we fold everything back in, the chin to the chest, the tailbone tucks. Bring it back to a neutral space, tabletop position. This time turn the left foot off the mat. Bring the weight onto that left hand. Bring your right foot back, lift your right hand up to the ceiling. Gaze up towards that thumb if you wish. Keep pushing into that left foot. Then if you wish to lift that right leg, squeezing the outside of those right glutes to lift that leg up to hip high. Right toes back to the shins, push the heel of the right foot away. Hold it here just for another couple of breaths. Keeping that bum tucked under, the strength through the core by squeezing those ribs and hips together. One more breath. And then release that right foot down, the right hand down, come back into a tabletop position, cat-cow. Breath in, lifts up the head, lifts up the bum, drops the belly. Breath out, we fold everything back in, the chin comes to the chest and that tailbone tucks, centre of the spine lifts. Come back to that neutral space. Step both feet back to a plank position and we'll hold it here for a couple of breaths. Push the heels back, crowns forward. Squeeze the bellies back towards the spine, then in and up towards those ribs. Soften the elbows. Widen the fingers, push into those palms. And then dropping down onto the knees. Turn the creases of the elbows forward, release all the way down to the floor. Untuck the toes. Take a bend into your right knee. Take a hold of the foot on that right side with the right hand. Bring the right toes back to the shins, then draw that right heel in towards the bum. Then push those hips down into the mat so you feel more stretch on that right front side of the thigh. Squeeze those hips in a little closer. Stretching through that front side of the body. You may feel it in that right hip flexor. Roll that shoulder back a little bit on that right side. Either resting on the chin or the forehead, whichever feels most comfortable for you. But every time you think about those hips, they may have lifted, so push them back into that mat. And then release that right foot back down to the floor. Bring the right hand by the side of the body. Take a bend this time into that left knee. Bring the left hand around to take a hold of the ankle on that left side. Bring the left toes back to the shins. Bring that left heel towards the bum. Then as you bring it into the bum, push those hips into the floor. Squeeze that left heel into that bum on that left side. Roll that left shoulder back. Try and create a little space between the collarbones, the shoulders and the ears. Those hips may have started lifting again. Push them back into the mat. One more breath here. Then release that left foot back down towards the floor. Bring both hands down by the sides of the chest. Tuck under the toes, push into the hands. Bring the chest back towards the thighs. Forehead to the mat. And then start to paddle the feet as you start to lift up those hips. First downward facing dog of the day. Maybe have a little nod and a shake of those hips. A little roll through those shoulders. Little movement through those hips. Feel it through the body. Notice where feels tight. Moving the hips from side to side. Moving one knee in and out. And then if you're happy to bring that down dog to a still position, encouraging those heels towards the mat. If it feels too much to straighten the legs, maybe put a micro bend in to soften through that lower back. And all the time encouraging that space between the ribs and hips to be slightly smaller. So we're switching on that core strength. If you're happy to straighten the legs, really try and squeeze those heels towards the floor. They don't have to reach, just an intention to get here. Take a breath out and start to bend the knees to bring them to hover off the mat. And then lift through the hips again, squeeze the heels back towards the floor and the chest back towards the thighs. And again, take a bend into the knees, bring them to hovering off the mat. And then lift those hips, squeeze those heels back towards the floor. One more time, bending into those knees, bringing them to hover off the mat, pushing into the hands and feet to support. And then lift the hips, squeeze those heels back. Then when you take your next breath in, come forward to a plank position. Drop down the knees, bring the elbows in by the sides of your body as you release to the floor, untuck the toes. Bring the hands behind the back and take an interlace of the fingers. Push the hands down towards the feet, squeeze the shoulder blades together, try and bring the palms towards each other. Your next breath in, lift up the chin, lift up the chest, squeeze those shoulders back, maybe lift up with those hands. Maybe choice to lift up with those feet. Obviously that breath will be slightly restricted into the belly now because we're putting all the pressure there. So we should be leaning on the lower ribs, the pubic bone and maybe just part of the thighs. Breathe that breath maybe into those middle parts of the ribs. One more breath here. Then release the feet down, bring the hands by the sides of the chest. Tuck under the toes, bring the chest back towards the thighs. Push into those hands and feet, lift up the hips, squeeze the heels back, or take a paddle if that's what those hamstrings and calves require. Squeeze the heels back now into stillness if you're happy to do so. Then coming down onto the knees, bring your right foot forward in between the hands. And then make that left foot go back a little further towards the back of the mat. Sink into the hips here. Push nice and strong into the front, the base of the front foot and the top of the back foot. Then start to walk those hands back towards that left knee and bring those right toes back towards the shins. Getting a hamstring stretch down the back of that right leg. The more you encourage those right toes back, the more you'll feel it in the Achilles and the calves. And the more you lift up that tailbone as though you're lifting it to the ceiling, the more you'll feel it in those hamstrings. If you wish to take a breath in here, lengthen the spine, breathe in. And as you breathe out, maybe fold over that front leg. Just bringing that body to wherever it reaches. This may not be accessible to you. It might be that you're lifted quite high because these back chain and muscles are extremely tight. That's fine. Just if you feel the stretch, you're doing the job. Then walk the hands back towards that right foot and sink back into that left hip flexor again. And here, maybe lift up that back left leg. Then if you've got
the range of movement to take a hold of that left foot, bringing that right hand arm onto the knee, squeezing that left foot in towards the bum. This may feel tight on the hamstrings again, but it gets a stretch a little deeper into that left hip, into that left thigh muscle. And it may challenge your balance a little here, but if you stayed here just lifting that leg, then you're working that hamstring to strengthen it. So if you're up here with me and you found that balance here and you're drawing that foot into the bum, we're going to release that leg back down. Bring both hands down by the sides of that right foot. Bring that right knee back to meet the left. Step both feet back to a plank. Paddle those feet as you start to lift up those hips. And squeeze those heels back when you're ready. Gaze back towards the toes, the knees, or the hips. Your next breath in, we're going to come forward to a plank position. And your next breath out, we drop down the knees. Turn the creases of the elbows forward, release that body all the way down towards the floor. So this might be a little more challenging for you. It may be that you bring both feet just to this point and then lift up the chest, maybe lift up those legs. Or you can take a hold of the ankles on both legs. And here you bring the toes back to the shins. You lift up through the chin, the chest, roll the shoulder blades back, and then you push those ankles into the hands to lift those thighs away, bringing it into our bow position. And if you wish, you can always use that strap to hook around those feet to maybe bring that into a little bit more accessibility. So then you will push into those hands, into those feet. Here. Whatever works for you. Maybe you're using that tie. If you're with me in bow pose, one more breath. And then release the chest down, release the feet down. Tuck under the toes, bring the chest back towards those thighs. Push into those hands and feet as you lift up the hips and squeeze those heels back. Have a little paddle through those feet, nod and shake of the head. Encourage yourself back into stillness in down dog for a breath. Then bringing yourself back down onto your knees. This time you step your left foot through in between the hands and just walk that back leg back a little further. So then sink those hips nice and low. So we're really pushing those hips down towards the floor to feel the stretch through the quad on this time the right leg. Then walking their hands back towards that right knee, starting to straighten through that left leg as you bring those toes of the left foot back towards the left shin. Again, the more you draw those toes back, the more you get the stretch through the bottom part of the leg. The more you lift that tailbone, the more you get the stretch in the hamstring. You can breathe in, lengthen the spine, lift through the chest, and as you breathe out, fold from the hips over that front leg. Again, this might not be a good thing for you, but all the time making sure those hips are centre in the mat, not rocking over to the right side. One more breath in this hamstring stretch. And then start to walk the hands back towards that left foot and sink back into those hips again. Pushing into the top of the back foot. And then if you wish to raise that right leg, just squeezing it into the bum or coming up with the forearm onto the left knee and bringing that right hand behind to grab a hold of that foot. Squeeze that foot in towards the bum if you're able to grab it. Again, you can wrap that strap around that foot to bring it a little closer. Sink those hips a little lower. Really feeling that stretch through that front side of the right thigh. But you may be in this position still, whatever works for you. If you're in this position without that external force, you're working those hamstrings a little stronger. Then release back down with that foot. Tuck those back toes under, lift that back knee. And then step back to a plank and lift those hips back up towards the ceiling. Next breath in, we're going to bring those feet to the front of the mat. Bring the sit bones towards the floor. Reach the feet forward and have the shoulders over the hips. Bring the arms up to shoulder height. Then slowly let that body release all the way to the floor with control. Using that belly strength, the ribs and hips squeezing, the belly drawing back, long limbs to help with the control. Then as you release those shoulders to the mat, we're going to take both knees into the middle, into a bend. Heel toe the feet out to the sides. Bring the arms to cactus arms. Bring your knees over to the left side, the gaze over to the right, and just let those legs relax. Holding it here just for a couple of breaths. Trying to keep that gaze towards that right elbow as the knees are to the left, maybe using that left hand to encourage that knee down. Then keeping this position, take that right leg over towards that left side. Maybe take a hold of that foot with the hand and then straighten out with that right leg. If you can't reach the foot with the hand, just straighten the leg out to rest over that left side. Still all the time maintaining that right shoulder to the floor. If you're grabbing a hold of the foot, you're trying to bring the toes back to the shins, the heel to push away. Shoulders maintain flatness and the hips turn to that left side. One more breath here. So you should be feeling that stretch on the outside of that right hip. Then take a bend back into the knees. Bring both knees back into the centre. Bring the feet back into the middle for a breath. Heel toe the feet back out to the width of the mat. And then take the knees over to the right side, the gaze over to the left. Maybe bring that right hand onto the top of that right knee to encourage it down a little more. Keeping that gaze towards that left elbow. And then from here, straightening that left leg out to the side. Maybe taking a hold of that foot with the hand and stretching it out to that right side of the mat, still maintaining this left shoulder on the floor. Feeling that stretch on the outside of that left hip, all the way down maybe into that IT band on the outside of that left thigh. Maybe you're feeling that hamstring stretch, calves and Achilles stretch again, withdrawing the toes back. But remember, those hands don't have to be holding those legs. It might just be that you're letting that left leg relax over the right. Then take a bend back into that left knee. Bring those knees back into the chest. And then from here, let the feet stay in the centre. Let the knees drop out to the sides. Soles of the feet come together. Bring the hands down onto the inside of the thighs just to encourage maybe a little more stretch through that inside of the groin. Push that tailbone down, take the arch out of the lower back. Reduce that space between the ribs and the hips to keep all this core centre connected. And then taking one more breath here. Then bring those knees back in towards the chest, squeeze them into the body. Keep the lower spines on the mat. Maybe to make circles with the knees in one direction. Take those circles back into the opposite way. And then when you're ready to find yourself in relaxation, bringing the feet forward, letting them drop out to the sides, mat width apart. Bring the hands down by the sides of the body. Take a turn of the head in one direction. Bring it back through centre. Take it over to the other side. Bring it back into the middle. Maybe push into the heels, lift the bum, send the centre of the spine towards the base of the mat. Maybe take a rock of those hips. So this is the time just to take that scan again from the top of the head down to the fingertips and the toes. Just noticing how your body feels. How does it feel from the beginning of practice compared to now? Always being mindful of the body, being mindful of the breath,
Take a nice long deep breath in and a long sigh out through the mouth. Close the eyes. Let the tongue drop away from the roof of the mouth, the lips to gently part. Soften the jaw and the forehead. Let everything be supported by the floor. Watching those breaths as they enter and exit the body. Noticing how relaxed the whole body feels. So you can take as much time as you wish in this place. When you're ready to come out, wriggle the fingers, the toes, maybe rotate the wrists. Bringing some movement back into the body and making your way into a seated space whenever you're ready. But in the meantime, if you're planning to stay here, have peace in your thoughts, your words, your hearts. From my heart to yours, Namaste.